In today's world, the monetization of knowledge has become commonplace, even taken for granted. Yet over 2,000 years ago, in the early days of ancient Greece, knowledge remained a privilege of the aristocracy, a rare and precious treasure, transmitted discreetly among sages, whispered within temples and the halls of philosophers. It was not until the 5th century BCE that a thinker emerged who dared to place a price tag on wisdom, bringing knowledge down from its lofty pedestal into the bustling classrooms of everyday citizens. He was the first to call himself a sophist, Protagoras. He looked not to the stars but to humanity. Around 490 BCE, in the Thracian region on the northern shore of the Aegean Sea, near the modern-day border of Greece and Bulgaria, a child was born into an ordinary family in the Greek colonial city of Abdera. His name was Protagoras, and though his beginnings were humble, his future would prove extraordinary. Roughly 30 years later, the same city would give rise to another remarkable thinker, Democritus, who would be remembered for formulating the atomic theory and become a towering figure in natural philosophy. But while Democritus gazed into the cosmos, Protagoras turned his eyes toward humanity. He became the first to call himself a sophist, the founder of a new intellectual profession. Through him, education moved from aristocratic privilege to public practice, laying the foundation of the Western tradition of learning known as the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, and logic. Though born a commoner, Protagoras was gifted with exceptional intelligence and a relentless spirit of inquiry. He was self-taught, driven by curiosity and critical thinking. From an early age, he began to question the doctrines and dogmas of the various philosophical schools of his time. Rather than searching the heavens for abstract cosmic truths, Protagoras re-centered philosophy on human experience. He asked how people perceive the world, how subjective differences shape reality, and how personal judgment becomes the basis for knowledge. Under his influence, philosophy took a decisive turn, from metaphysical speculation to practical application, becoming a tool to serve society, politics, and the individual mind. But the intellectual confines of Abdera could no longer contain his growing ambitions. The young Protagoras set out for Athens, the most vibrant city of thought and culture in the ancient world. There, amid a flourishing democracy and a dazzling exchange of art and ideas, he would find the perfect stage for his philosophical journey. The Glory of Athens. In the 5th century BCE, Athens entered its most glorious era, what would later be known as the Golden Age of Athens. Before Protagoras ever set foot in this vibrant city-state, the Athenians had just achieved decisive victories in the Greco-Persian Wars. When the once invincible Persian kings were forced into a chaotic retreat from the Greek peninsula, it marked a turning point. The Greek polis, led by Athens, had successfully repelled the eastern forces of despotism. In the wake of this triumph, Athenian democracy soared to its zenith. At that time, Athens was among the most prosperous ports on the Aegean Sea. Its harbors were crowded with merchant ships, its markets bustling with people and a dazzling array of goods. On the agora, the cries of vendors mingled with the performances of tragic poets and the spirited debates of philosophers. Politics, economics, the arts, and philosophy merged into a vivid tapestry of civic life. The foundation of this flourishing culture was a steadily perfected system of democratic governance. Leading the city was the renowned General Pericles, who, having won the public's vote year after year, carried forward and expanded upon the democratic reforms of Cleisthenes, the so-called father of Athenian democracy. In 508 BCE, Cleisthenes had dismantled the hereditary aristocracy's grip on power by instituting the tribal system and establishing the Council of 500, Boule, based on regional rather than familial divisions. Building upon this, Pericles enacted deeper reforms: the creation of a people's court, Heliaia, where jurors were chosen by lot to prevent elite control of justice, the implementation of rotation and stipend systems for public officials, ensuring even the poorest citizens could participate in governance, and the expansion of the ecclesia, the citizen assembly held 4 times monthly, where all adult male citizens could directly vote on matters of state. Within this democratic framework, civic participation became both a duty and a source of pride. This environment gave rise to an enormous demand for knowledge, particularly the practical arts of rhetoric, logic, and debate. Eloquence in the ecclesia could influence the direction of public policy. Persuasive speech in the courts could determine the outcome of legal disputes, and sharp reasoning in the agora became a path to prestige and political influence. It was at this historical crossroads that Protagoras arrived in Athens. He not only witnessed the heights of democratic society, but also recognized the potential to bring knowledge into the marketplace. With his exceptional talent for rhetoric and teaching, he seized the moment, pioneering the professional role of the Sophist, transforming education into a civic service, and making wisdom a vital instrument in the functioning of democracy. Knowledge with a price, philosophy descends from the sacred altar. The young Protagoras, ambitious and gifted, flourished in Athens like a fish in water. Not only was he learned and rigorous in thought, but he also possessed extraordinary linguistic talent, excelling in rhetoric and debate. In this city-state that celebrated eloquence and pulsed with political energy, he quickly rose to prominence and gained widespread acclaim. More importantly, Protagoras keenly observed that, under the growing influence of democratic governance, Athenian society had developed an unprecedented demand for knowledge, especially the arts of rhetoric and debate. With the realities of public assemblies and courtroom trials, every aspiring citizen needed to master the skills of persuasive speech, logical reasoning, and moral judgment. Protagoras was the one who recognized this educational vacuum and boldly stepped in to fill it. Unlike traditional philosophers who founded schools, handpicked disciples, and taught for free, Protagoras was the first to publicly identify himself as a sophist, asserting that knowledge can be taught and that wisdom should carry value. He brought philosophy down from the temple and academy into the civic classroom, placing a price tag on intellectual instruction and breaking through the barriers of birth and class. Whether noble or commoner, anyone willing to pay tuition could now access education and training. For this reason, he is often regarded as the founding figure of professional education in the Western tradition. Protagoras' curriculum encompassed several key domains: rhetoric, the art of structuring arguments and persuading audiences in public or legal contexts; ethics and political education, how to become a virtuous citizen and understand justice, responsibility, and civic duty; relativism and dialectical training, guiding students to comprehend that truth is not singular and cultivating the ability to see issues from multiple perspectives. From this point on, philosophy ceased to be the solitary speculation of lofty minds seeking the cosmic origin of all things. It was no longer a sacred gift passed secretly among the elite, but a techne, a practical art, available to all citizens, to be learned, practiced, and applied in daily and political life. Through his work, Protagoras made knowledge a commodity for the first time, but more importantly, he made it a crucial tool for personal development, democratic participation, and social mobility. His educational vision would go on to shape centuries of thought. The triadic training in language, logic, and rhetoric that he championed was later systematized by Aristotle, elevated by Roman rhetoricians such as Cicero, and eventually codified in medieval Europe as the trivium, the foundation of classical liberal education. As the originator of this tradition, Protagoras rightfully holds his place among the founding figures in the history of Western education. Man is the measure of all things. During his teaching years in Athens, Protagoras was invited by Pericles to help draft the constitution for the colony of Thurii, and authored philosophical works such as On Truth and On the Gods, through which he gradually developed his core doctrines of relativism and agnosticism. Although these works have long been lost, one line has echoed through the annals of philosophy: man is the measure of all things. This seemingly simple statement, in fact, challenged the foundations of philosophical belief in universal truth that preceded him. Unlike the natural philosophers who sought objective truths, Protagoras argued that so-called truth does not exist independently of human perception. Whether the wind is cold or warm, whether a person is beautiful or not, whether an action is just or unjust, such judgments have no absolute standards, but depend on each individual's perception and circumstance. In other words, truth is not in the heavens, but within the human heart. This position is known as epistemological relativism. It holds that human experience is the only valid standard by which anything can be measured, and that there exists no truth beyond or outside of human perception. The world is what it appears to be, to us. This idea would later become a foundational reference point for the development of epistemology, but it also drew fierce criticism. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle all challenge Protagoras' view, arguing that relativism leads to logical incoherence and moral nihilism. The paradox of Euthalos, a trial of ideas. Protagoras' method of presenting two opposing arguments on every issue is vividly illustrated in a well-known anecdote from antiquity. According to the story, Protagoras and his student Euthalos signed a contract. Euthalos would pay his tuition only after winning his first court case. However, after completing his studies, Euthalos deliberately avoided going to court, prompting Protagoras to sue him for the unpaid fee. This irony-laden lawsuit gave rise to the famous paradox of Euthalos. Protagoras argued, "If I win the case, the court will order Euthalos to pay the fee. If I lose, Euthalos will have won his first case, and by the terms of our contract, he must pay me. Therefore, whether I win or lose, I am owed the tuition." Euthalos countered, "If I win, the court has rejected your claim, and I owe nothing. If I lose, then I still haven't won my first case in the legal sense of the contract, so I also owe nothing. Either way, I don't have to pay." This paradox has been remembered as a classic demonstration of sophistic reasoning and is often cited as a satirical critique of Protagoras' relativism. If everyone is the measure of all things, then even contracts, justice, and law lose their objective grounding. Protagoras' relativism and agnosticism did not go unchallenged and eventually led to trouble. In his now lost treatise on the gods, he wrote, "Concerning the gods, I am not able to know whether they exist or not, nor what sort they may be." Such agnostic views were considered impious in Athens, where civic religion played a foundational role in public life. He was charged with impiety, his books were burned, and he was exiled from the city. According to later accounts, Protagoras died at sea en route to Sicily, perishing in exile. Despite the controversies, Protagoras inaugurated a radical philosophical turn, from cosmology to humanism, from ontology to epistemology. He no longer sought the origin of the cosmos in the stars, but turned his gaze toward human perception, language, and experience. He is not only the father of relativism, but also a foundational figure in the classical liberal arts tradition, the trivium of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. The art of argumentation he taught remains deeply embedded in legal, political, and communicative disciplines to this day, proving that while his words were once condemned to flames, his ideas have endured for millennia.